A group of teenagers, full of life and excitement, embarking on a camping trip to celebrate a birthday. The sun is shining, the lake is glistening, and the forest is alive with the sounds of nature. But as night falls, the idyllic setting transforms into a nightmare. What started as a celebration of youth and friendship would end in bloodshed, betrayal, and one of the most infamous unsolved murder mysteries in history. This is the chilling story of the Lake Bodom murders, a tale that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about trust, fear, and the darkness that can lurk in the human heart. It was June 4th, 1960, in southern Finland. 4 teenagers, 15-year-old Maija, her boyfriend Niels, and their friends Seppo and Anja were on their way to Lake Bodom, a picturesque spot surrounded by dense forests. The trip was meant to celebrate Maija's upcoming 16th birthday. The group was excited, laughing, and enjoying the freedom of youth. Little did they know, their adventure would take a horrifying turn. When they arrived at the lake, the group was greeted by a stunning view, crystal clear water, towering trees, and a peaceful atmosphere. But their first encounter with the local kiosk woman was anything but welcoming. She was hostile, rude, and even warned them to camp as far away as possible. Her strange behavior left Maija unsettled, but the others brushed it off, eager to start their celebration. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the group swam in the lake, shared stories, and toasted to Maija's birthday. The atmosphere was magical. Finland's famous white nights cast a soft glow over the landscape. White night is a kind of like hazy glow in the sky from the sun. Later that night as the group slept in their tent, something or someone approached. In the middle of the night, about 4 a.m., Maija woke to the sound of rustling outside. So she sat in the tent and looked out, but she couldn't see anything. She just saw the hazy night sky from the white night. But then suddenly a dark shadow figure moved in front of the tent. When the shadowy figure looked into the tent, it had this bright, glowing red eyes. Before she could react, the tent was torn open. In the next morning, a father and sons decided to go to that dock where the campsite was, to go swimming. Eventually, they make it to the same place where the campsite was. The father couldn't tell what it was from the place they were, so he moved a little bit closely to the campsite to investigate. But eventually, he realized what they were walking into, so he stops his son and turned back saying, "We have to leave right now." So they ran back to find a phone and calls the police. When the police arrived and investigate the scene, Anja and Seppo couldn't even make it out of the tent. They have been beaten and stabbed to death basically through the canvas of the tent. Maija did manage to get out of the tent, but she couldn't escape. She was kind of laying top of the tent, and she had broken bones. It would turn out she was stabbed 15 times. Next to her was the body of Niels. He was unrecognizable. When the police officers came at the scene and investigate, they thought they came to see 4 bodies, and one officer knelt down near of those bodies. Suddenly, he heard a gasping sound, but it was very faint, and to their shock, Maija's boyfriend, Niels, suddenly opened his eyes and looked up at the officer. Niels was alive and immediately taken away with an ambulance. The investigation that followed was one of the largest in Finnish history. Police interviewed thousands of people, searched the forest, and even called in the military for assistance. But this scene wasn't make any sense. There were some things missing from the crime scene that seemed to be as an indication of a robbery. But the motorcycles were there, and the keys were not. Niels' jacket and shoes were also missing. A composite sketch of a suspect, a blonde man seen running from the scene, was circulated, but no one was ever arrested. After Niels got recovered, he realized that he doesn't have a good memory on what happened on that day. But he remembers one thing, that there was this shadowy thing and bright red eyes. The case grew cold, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and haunting theories. Over the 44 years, countless theories emerged. Some believed it was a random act of violence by a stranger. In 2004, they pointed that the killer was Niels himself, the only survivor, suggesting he staged the attack to cover up his own crimes. Because Niels and Seppo was fighting for something to do with their girlfriends, that's why Maila were brutally stabbed like that. When Niels got arrested, he was 62 years old as a bus driver who married and lived happily with kids. But in the jury, Niels maintained his innocence, saying he didn't remember anything of the incident. The only thing that he remembers is the shadowy thing and the bright red eyes. So the jury believed him and easily acquitted, and in the end, Finland gave him a huge monetary settlement for his mental suffering. Most public suspicion focused on Hans Assmann, a German-born, naturalized Finnish citizen who lived several kilometers from the shore of Lake Bodom. Day after the murderers, two boys were fishing near the campsite, and they saw a blonde-haired guy running away from the campsite. It was a random scene, so they were focused on the fishing. When they learned about the murders, they went to the police and described the person that saw. So the police created a composite sketch what the boys saw. So the police sent the sketch all over the Finland. Huge amount of people came forward and told the police, "I saw that guy." But it turns out that they were getting false reports. But one report that came really stand out. After a day the murders happened, a man named Hans Assmann was checked into a hospital 13 miles away from where the lake murders happened. He was claiming that he has some pain in his stomach, but the doctors didn't believe him because he was so drunk and aggressive. One of the doctors contacted police because he looked like the guy on sketch and he was filthy. There were red points in his shirt, his fingernails were dirty and filled with mud, and he couldn't explain why. When the police interrogate Hans and discovered he has a history of violence, but Hans had a rock-solid evidence that he was 15 miles away with his girlfriend's sister, and the brother-in-law. The police wanted that their guy to be Hans, but they eventually learned that he is not. Then there was Carl, who had a nasty reputation. Sometimes he lashes to the campers who stayed in this area. Sometimes Carl gets drunk and go attack at other campers, cut down their tents in the middle of the night, and on one time he fired a gun at a camper who runs past him. He missed, but he is absolute insane guy. After the murders happened, locals immediately went to police and informed about Carl. When the police went to question Carl, but instead of talking to him, they had the chance to talk with Carl's wife, which was the women at the kiosk, women who were so nasty to the teens when they were first arrived. But the women said to the police that Carl was with her and the kids when the murders happened, and police believed her. They never suspect Carl as a major suspect. Local people knew this was a huge mistake. After 9 years, the case is totally forgotten. Carl was having a drink with a neighbor in the area. Carl was admitted that he was the Lake Bodom murderer. The neighbor was so terrified of this and said to him, "If that's the truth, you should go drown yourself." In the next day, Carl was found at the lake, drowned right near the teens had been attacked. The police were never able to find it was accidental or did it on purpose, or did somebody did it to him. But with no concrete evidence, the truth remained elusive. Today, Lake Bodom is infamous. Tourists visit the site drawn by the chilling story of the murders. The case has inspired books, documentaries, and even horror movies. But for the families of the victims, the pain and unanswered questions remain. What really happened that night? Who was the shadowy figure Niels claimed to see? And why were these young lives cut so tragically short? The Lake Bodom murders are a stark reminder of how quickly joy can turn to terror, and how the past can haunt us for decades. As we reflect on this tragic story, let's remember the lives lost and the mysteries that still linger. Remember folks, if you don't hit that subscribe button, not only will you miss out on more chilling tales like this one, but you might also find yourself face to face with a kiosk lady who's had one too many beers and a very bad day. And trust me, you don't want to be on her bad side or worse, camping near her lake. So, do yourself a favor, subscribe, turn on notifications, and maybe avoid setting up tents in places where the locals look like they've been auditioning for a horror movie. Stay safe, stay subscribed, and for the love of all things spooky, don't forget to like the video, or the shadowy figure in the woods might just come for you next.